My name is Ed Smith. I live in Modesto, California. I served 4 years in the military in Southeast Asia. I have 29 years of service as a police officer in 3 agencies in the state of California. I'm a combat veteran. I was in Vietnam. When I got out, I went into law enforcement. During my tour with the military, I've on occasion seen a couple of people that I knew killed. They were on the wall. When I went into law enforcement, I worked for Madera County Sheriff's Office, and I was there for 5 years, and then I transferred over to Madera Police Department, and that's in Madera County in California also. When I went to work for the Sheriff's Office, I met a friend Deputy Steve Lindblom. He was also a combat vet, so we meshed real well. Our families were the same age. He had a small son, so did I. We got to be very close, and when I transferred to Madera Police Department, we still stayed real close. And in August of 1975, one weekend we were at a park with the kids, and having a picnic and enjoying ourselves. A week later, I covered up Steve's head where he took a .30 caliber bullet in the forehead. I found his body in the back. And it didn't really bother me at that time. We were in a shootout. There was a big time shootout going on. I got there. Well, I was getting ready to go to work on swing shift. This is in 1975 again. Back then, we had no mandatory time off for critical incidents. I don't even think the term was coined at that time. There was no cops. There was no warrior's rest. There was, suck it up, buttercup. I got a call at home saying that there'd been 3 officers shot and to get out there as soon as I could. So I drove my personal car out, and there was two reserve deputies who had arrived at the same. What this is called the Last Chance Grocery Store, and it's just inside the city limits in a rural area. And there's an attached dwelling to the grocery store itself, and the people that ran the grocery store also lived there. He was very proud of himself and prided himself on shooting rabbits in the head with a .30 caliber carbine. He and his wife got into an argument, and he threatened her with a gun. Immediately across the street is an elementary school. She ran to the elementary school, called the police. Well, the 2 officers who arrived there got the story from her, and she told them, be careful because he likes to shoot things. So they walked across the street. The guy opened the front door and aimed the carbine at him, and apparently had a malfunction. And while he's racking it, the 2 officers took cover. Once he cleared the gun, he immediately engaged them, and they returned fire. A side story to this is, at the conclusion of this incident, they were searching the house, and just inside the door there was a couch. At the front door there's a couch, and behind the couch they found a .30 caliber round, unfired, but with a dented primer. So they were very, very fortunate that day. Anyway, when I got there, there was 2 reserve deputies who got there. One of them had a Hollywood crease, I'd call it, because the bullet actually traveled down the left side of his head, did not break the skin, but took the hair off, and there was a white line where the bullet went. The other reserve was a dentist. He was a professional dentist. Again, the suspect engaged them immediately when they got there. Well, as Doc Haley pulled his service weapon up to fire it, he took a .30 caliber round between the first and second knuckle of his hand. That bullet had his hand not been there, he would have taken it in the head. That bullet destroyed his hand and ultimately destroyed his career as a dentist. When I got there, I was told that there was 2 officers had been shot. They were okay. They'd gone to the hospital, and that Steve had arrived and had gone to the rear, but they hadn't been able to get in touch with him on the radio. So they asked me to help him cover the rear. So I drove my car around, my personal car, around to a street behind this. And again, there's a rural area and there's open fields in the back. And then at the back of this house, there was like a 4-foot fence that went along, kind of form a backyard. And on the outside of the fence that I was approaching, there was little outbuildings for rabbits and chickens, and there's some corrals. As I approached across this field, I felt kind of naked being out in the middle of the field. But when I got there, there was a yearling cow that I grabbed by the ear and the tail and used that as kind of cover. Because back in '75, we didn't have vests. And I worked this cow up to where I could get better cover. He stepped on my foot and broke my toe, incidentally. But I got up. There was a bathtub that they used for a watering trough there, just on the outside of this 4-foot fence. So I'm working my way to that. I figured that could give me some cover as well as concealment there. And I didn't know where Steve was, but as I'm crawling up, something caught my eye, and I looked, and it looked like a mannequin, looked like something dressed in a uniform, and I couldn't really tell what it was until I got closer, and I realized it was a body. And it came to thought that when I first looked at it, I didn't recognize the face because, again, it had been pretty much destroyed with the impact of the bullet. And I remember thinking, he wears glasses like Steve does. And then I saw the nameplate, so I knew it was Steve. Again, I was concerned. We were in the middle of a gunfight, and I was real concerned about safety, and there was nothing I could do for him at that moment. And then I became enraged. I was so mad because I look over and there's flies crawling on his face. And it's still there was an old dirty piece of burlap there that I picked up, and I put it over Steve's head. Keep them fucking flies off. Excuse me. Keep them flies off. So then he had an 870 Remington shotgun, personal shotgun of his, and he loved that shotgun. He had a Remington folding stock put on it, and he carried it. That was his shotgun he carried in his patrol car. It was laying there, and it had blood on it. I wiped off, and it wasn't. The safety was off, but it hadn't been in battery, which I cocked it and put a shell in the chamber, put it in the battery. And then I was thinking tactically at the time. I wasn't upset. I was just something we had to do. We had to take care of business. And I'd been behind this tub this time, and I looked up over the tub to get a layout, and between the cracks in the board fence, I saw the bad guy coming out the back door with his rifle at the ready, and I'm watching him, and he came out and he's looking around, scanning where Steve was. Steve was like less than 5 feet away from me, and then he looked to his right, and when he looked to his right, he's looking away from me. And I remember coming up on my knees with Steve's shotgun and firing one round from his 12 gauge. And then seeing the guy crawl back inside. I fired all 4 rounds out of that gun. There was 4 empty cases on the ground. I do not remember, to this day, I don't remember firing those other 3 rounds. At the autopsy of the bad guy, they found the cause of death was 2 buckshot in his abdomen, and he bled out from the inside, slowly. They also had some questions for me that there was 3 buckshots in the soles of his feet. And they said, you know how I got there? No, I don't. No, I don't. But anyway, he returned fire back out from inside. I had my service weapon. I was firing back at him. Then it was a cluster, because there's officers in front, I'm in back. We're firing. He's firing. We had a crossfire situation. We didn't care. We were, like I say, we were actively engaged at that time. Uh, Finally, the firing ceased a little bit. It slowed down, and I remember I was trying to think, what can I do for Steve? Then my thoughts came more towards what am I going to do about Steve? And I got so some of those things come back. Some little details come back that you remember. They asked me on the radio, said, "Can we get Steve's body out?" I said, "If you can get him to there was a like a 6-foot fence that went down the side of the house, and then along the back was that 4-foot fence, and like I say, that kind of formed a backyard there. And on the outside of that fence was where all these outbuildings and the like were." And they said, "If you can get him there, we'll have a car to meet you if you can get him to that field." And I told him, I said, "Yeah, but it's going to take me a couple of minutes. I'll let you know when," because I knew what I had to do. And because Steve had been out there over 2 hours now, he'd been laying there. And there's things that occur to the body when of a person who's died. And I was just saying, I had to break the rigor in some of his joints so that I could help get him out of there. I could help him so I could get him out. I gave him the go word. I said, "Okay, I'm ready to go." I said, "I'll meet you there." So I got Steve over my shoulder, and I went running towards that 6-foot fence in the field there. And there was still gunfire going on, but I don't know whether it was the officers in front shooting or if it was a bad guy shooting. I don't know. But I know there was gunfire, and I'm carrying it out on the gunfire and wondering, I thought I'd left that environment when I got out of the service. So anyway, there was a deputy who drove a sheriff's car, and he got a lot of air out of that car coming across that plowed field. And he pulled up there and stopped, and I was able to get Steve in the back. And then he drove slowly so I could get back to a point of cover and continue covering the rear of the house. And they got Steve's body out of there finally. That was, that's something I'll never forget. And, but anyway, the firing went down. We made entry into the place. We cleared by fire. It was no room searches or anything. It was strictly a military operation. If there's a door there, you blast the door. Anything on the other side of it's going to die. And we made entry. We found the bad guy. He was dead inside. And so then it was turned over to whoever, the detectives or whatever. I came out. I got Steve's shotgun and walked back to my car. Got in my car and went down to the police department and took off my bloody clothes, and I subsequently burned those clothes too. So anyway, I put on a fresh uniform and hit the bricks and went to work. And when I was in the service, and I got out, they call it PTSD now, and I guess I had that. I had the night sweats, the bad dreams, waking up screaming, all that other bullshit they go, I'm sorry. All that other stuff that goes along with it, but they didn't have a term for it at the time. And it was just, again, suck it up, buttercup, and thank God I was strong enough to compartmentalize these things and put them away, lock them away, forget about them. And, because it wasn't fair to my family doing that, and I had to do something. And I never dreamed again. To this day, I don't recall ever having a dream. Now, my wife will, she says sometimes at night I whimper, but I don't yell and scream anymore, and I have no recollection of it. I carried this around with me for many years, over 50 years. I was, again, cops are tough. You got to be tough because we see every negative thing there is in the human race. Um, and again, having this locked away, I did a pretty good job of it. And then I retired. And once I retired, I didn't have to be so tough anymore. And that's when those little boxes started getting real rusty and cracking open. And I'd have some problems. And I'd been to the state memorial in Sacramento. I saw Steve's name on that memorial. I was sad, but it didn't really bother me. And the traveling wall that came through, I went to that and I saw names of people that I was with when they passed. And it really didn't bother. I was sad, but it really didn't bother me. In 2010, we went to Washington, D.C. for Cop Week. We went to the memorial. And again, those old feelings are starting to come back here. I saw Steve's name for the first time, and I just broke down and started crying. She was with me, and thank God she was with me. And I didn't understand. I couldn't understand why I was so emotional at that point. And she told me, she said, all these years, she said, I know that you mourn for Steve. She said, this is the first time I've ever seen you grieve. We went to the Black Wall, the memorial, and I saw names of people that I knew there, and I touched their names, and again, I just broke down. I was a mess. I was just a mess. And once we left Police Week, I'm okay again. I'm okay. And then we went to, when we came back to Police Week, every year that we went back, I went to see Steve's name, and I was a bowl of jelly. I was useless. I just broke down. And every time I went to the wall, same thing. And that was hard for me to understand. Why am I doing this? What's going on? And the last day of Police Week last year, we always attend the conferences there that they have, and to see if we can't help somebody or find tools to help somebody. So Gail said, why don't you, my wife said, why don't you go to the cop or co-workers? Maybe we can find something, maybe we can pick up something we can help guys at work with still. So, okay. Well, that morning I'd gone to see Steve, because his last day I didn't know if I was going to get the opportunity to come back and say goodbye to him. So I went down there, and again I broke down, and I composed myself by the time I got back to the host hotel, and went into that co-workers, and I don't remember who was actually teaching that thing. But everything he talked about was every feeling and emotion that I had. And I was sitting there, and I was having a hell of a time sitting there. And I couldn't stand anymore. I had to get up and leave. And there was a gentleman who saw me and saw what condition I was in. And he followed me out, grabbed me, and put me up against the wall. And his name was Brett Key with Warriors Arrest Foundation. I owe the man big time. He asked me what was wrong, and snot and tears running down my face. I said, nothing, nothing. And he basically said, bovine excreta, what's wrong? And I realized at that moment, that guy standing in front of me was a cop who had my 6, and he was my backup. And I told him things I had never, the stuff I just talked about, I had never told another human being. I told Brett that day. And I remember him having his hand on my shoulder, and him saying, you need some help. I'm going to get you some help. I'm going to help you. And I was thinking, yeah, right. This had been going on a long time, I was dealing with this shit before you. I'm sorry for the cuss word. I've been dealing with this ever since before you were born, But I trusted the man, and he said he asked me about EMDR. He said, have you ever had that? I said, no, I've never had that. And he said, I'd like to get you in to see somebody. And this is the last day of the police week. And I said, okay. And so he said, he put me in touch with Denny, and Denny wanted me to see him that afternoon. Well, I went to an EMDR class with Kathy Thomas. They gave it, and because I had no idea what it was. And we went together and sat there and learned about EMDR. And I said, okay, sure. And then with Denny, the way he explained it to me made sense to me. And he put me through this EMDR. Now, I don't know how it works. I don't know what happened to me. And to this day, and I will always probably call it that strange ass voodoo shit that happened to me that day. I was shocked at how my emotions all of a sudden came under. I felt calm. It was a new calm. And he said basically I was cured. I said, yeah, right. Spend 30 minutes with you, and you just helped me put down baggage I've been carrying around for 50 years. I don't think so. He said, you're done. I said, I'm going to give it the acid test. I'm going to the wall. He said, go to both of them. Go to both of them. And I went back and I saw Steve's name, and I stood there, and I was sad that he died, but I was glad that I knew him, and I didn't break down. I didn't break down and cry. I felt good. I felt good that I knew him. My wife and I went to the Black Wall. I touched names of people I knew there. And again, I was sorry. I felt bad that they died, but I was glad that I knew them, and I didn't break down and cry. And it was just strange to me. And ever since then, every day seems to help a little bit more. And cops asked me to do my story, to put it down on paper for them. That was tough. It's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to put it down on paper. But I got through it. I had to do it. I had to do it for the guys that I knew. And that's just part of the healing. But I owe Brett Key and the Warriors Rest so much for that man being able to recognize there's somebody that's got some problems and needs some help, and put me up against the wall that day. And I'll never forget you, my friend. That's my story.